The exploratory phase is over, and I've decided to seek the Green nomination for President of the United States. And I've decided to run because so many people have urged me to and have shown support. And I'm not out here by myself. I'm out here as part of a collective leadership. Andrea is one of them. There are two other co-chairs of the Green Party, Tony Ndege and Margaret Flowers, who are part of this team. Two former vice presidential candidates of the Green Party, Sherry Honkala and Ajama Baraka. Veterans of the Black Liberation Movement like Bruce Dixon and Asantewaa Nkrumah Ture. Progressive commentators like Chris Hedges and Kevin Zeese. The environmental scientists that we should know and read more, and a DC statehood Green Party stalwart, David Schwartzman. The political economist and Green New Deal policy expert, John Wren, who's going to make a presentation of our budget for a Green New Deal shortly. The former county supervisor, almost mayor, and currently a public defender in San Francisco, Matt Gonzalez, and many, many others. And I apologize for anybody I left out, but my whole time would be up if I told you everybody. So I don't know how I can say no to those people. I respect them. They're important in the Green Party. And if they think I should do it, I'm going to defer to their judgment and try to do it. So we've talked about a campaign with two fundamental goals. First one is to build the Green Party. And people say, well, why do you run for president? Why don't you start local? This country has the most difficult ballot access laws of any electoral democracy in the world. Our signature requirements are ridiculous. And I could go through the numbers of other countries, I don't have time, but the point is you get ballot lines in a lot of states, almost 40 of them, by running a candidate for president. So we are running one thing to get more ballot lines. We have 20, we want them in all 51 states in the District of Columbia, so that our local candidates can run in the next period. And we're talking about building up the Green Party into a major party because the two major parties are not solving our problems. The climate crisis, the new nuclear arms race, and the crises most of us face every month, like 80% of us, paying for our bills, our regular bills for groceries, utilities, rent, medical bills, student loans, tuition. 80% of us have trouble meeting that budget. That's what we found out from an AP study several years ago. That's the first purpose, to build the Green Party. The second is to advance real solutions. We're calling for an eco-socialist Green New Deal. Now, we're really appreciative of the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Kids in the Sunshine Movement have got the national spotlight on this. The problem is, as the Democrats often do, they take the brand, the slogan, and dilute its content. And we're here to set the standard for a Green New Deal. So, the Green New Deal for us involves two basic programs, an Economic Bill of Rights and a Green Economy Reconstruction Program. And the Economic Bill of Rights is something that Franklin Roosevelt, as president, in two State of the Union addresses, his last two in 1944 and 1945, asked Congress to enact. And they never have. And there have been Democratic majorities in both houses with Democratic presidents, every Democratic president from Roosevelt, Truman, Johnson, Carter, Clinton, and Obama, and they have got none of these things done. And we're talking about the right to a job guarantee like the WPA, locally planned, federally funded. You create jobs that meet community needs, and people go to the employment office instead of unemployment office and get their job to provide what the community needs. It means a minimum wage that's a living wage. We're talking about $20 an hour indexed to inflation and productivity. We're talking about a guaranteed income above poverty for those who are unable to work. We're talking about decent homes for all, which means we got to start building public housing that's high quality, mixed income instead of segregated, mixed use, so that, and also net zero carbon emissions. So it's a jobs program, it's a desegregation program, it's an affordable housing program, and it's a clean, green energy program. And in the meantime, as we build those out, back in the 60s, the civil rights movement picked up this demand for an economic bill of rights. They brought it to the March on Washington in 1963, the Freedom Budget in 1966, and the Poor People's Campaign in 1968. And they were talking about building 500,000 affordable units a year until, they said, their phrase was until slums are cleared. We're saying until everybody has access to affordable housing. And in the meantime, we want universal rent control, because the rent is too damn high, as we say here in New York. And it's true across the country. People are being evicted. Homelessness is growing. It's out of control. We want comprehensive health care for all. We want a single-payer national health service, not just national health insurance. We want to bring back the Dellums bill, which is the more democratic and cost-effective and cost-controlling bill than national health insurance. So we'd have public health boards elected locally to keep the system accountable, and also put the health providers on salary rather than them being in profit maximizing institutions or income maximizing institutions, which they'll just feed at the public trough of insurance. So that is a single payer system, but it's better than these insurance programs that are out there. That's a whole discussion, but we're talking about comprehensive health care for all as a right. And finally, lifelong tuition-free public education, from child care and pre-K through college and adult education, technical schools, just taking classes when you're an adult. That should all be free at public institutions. We did it here in New York City from 1848 until 1976 in the CUNY system. And we're a lot richer now. It's inexcusable that we have $1.5 trillion of student debt in this country. So that's the Economic Bill of Rights. Now, the Green Economy Reconstruction Program, the central demand is to get to 100% clean energy and zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. That's what the climate science says we must do. And I'm not talking about the UN. They're conservative. Their report's got to be approved by Saudi Arabia and Russia and the Trump administration. They are very conservative. You go read James Hansen or Kevin Anderson in the UK. We're past time where we should have got to 100% clean energy. When we ran on the Green New Deal, and I'm the original Green New Dealer, I ran on a Green New Deal for governor of New York in 2010. And we were saying 100% by 2020 because that's what the climate science said. We had to change it to 2030 because time has passed. So we not only have to stop emitting, we got to draw it down, which is another part of the Green Economy Reconstruction Program. Organic agriculture, to take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the biosphere so it's not heating up the planet. And that's what rebuilding soils and also restoring habitat. Part of it is a civilian conservation corps to restore wetlands and forests and bring some of this carbon out of the atmosphere. We're going to talk about, when we look at the budget, how important green manufacturing is, zero waste green manufacturing. Our manufacturing is lost. We've lost our machine tool industry, and that's the core of any manufacturing industry. If we want solar panels or wind generators, we got to go overseas to get them at this point. So we're going to rebuild industry and put a Green New Deal factory in every congressional district. The military industrial complex has put something in every district to fortify their politics of bloated military spending. We're going to do the same thing with this Green New Deal. So those are some of the things that we're talking about with the Green Economy Reconstruction Program. We're going to talk more about it when we look at this budget. Now, we're calling for an eco-socialist Green New Deal because we can't rely on profit incentives in the market to get this done in the time frame we're talking about. We need a World War II scale mobilization right now. During World War II, the federal government either took over or built over a quarter of the manufacturing capacity of this country in order to turn industry on a dime to build the arsenal for democracy that defeated the Nazis. We need to do nothing less in order to defeat climate change. So we're going to build this green economy, and it's going to be an economic prosperity program, not just a climate action program. And a lot of people fight these environmental reforms saying it's jobs versus the environment. No, we create jobs by correcting our relationship with the environment. We're going to revive the economies of the Rust Belt and the inner cities and rural America. And we're going to do it differently this time. The federal government gave those factories it built or took over back to the super rich and their corporations after World War II, a big subsidy to corporate America. This time, we're going to spread the wealth. We're going to give it to the workers as worker co-ops, so they'll get the full value of the labor they create at work. So the question is, how are you going to pay for this? Well, we're talking about more progressive taxes of wealth, income, and estates. We're talking about ecological taxes on carbon and resource extraction and other pollution. And there's plenty of money to do this. The studies going back to the 90s show that the bottleneck to make the transition to clean energy is labor, not capital or technology. The technology's there. The capital's there. Corporate America and the banks are sitting on $6 trillion in liquid assets because they don't have profitable investments. So they're doing financial investing. They're rearranging who owns what we already got and concentrating that ownership. That's the financial sector, which is like a vampire on the rest of the economy. And then they got 20 trillion in offshore tax havens. That's the world capitalist class. I mean, that's so much money. That's more than we need to do a Green New Deal. So this Green New Deal budget we're talking about, we're going to get to, the bottom line numbers are nearly 23 million jobs, including nearly 6 million jobs in manufacturing. And the investment's going to be about $2 trillion. That's the Green Economy Reconstruction Program part. And that's the standard against which we want all the discussion about the Green New Deal that is now going on in the presidential election to be measured up against. And I said that they diluted the program. They removed the demand for a complete ban on fracking and new fossil fuel infrastructure. They extended the deadline 20 years from 2030 to 2050 to zero out greenhouse gas emissions. You give a politician 20 years, what are they going to do? They're going to kick it down the road. They're going to say, oh, somebody else can worry about that. That's an excuse for inaction. And they did not take on the military-industrial complex, which is where there's a lot of physical plan, but even more importantly, the engineering and technical know-how we need to put into this Green New Deal instead of producing more weapons of mass destruction. Now, it's better to tax the rich up front than to borrow from them and pay them interest for it and further concentrate wealth. But we've got to do this program. If we have to borrow or create money, we're going to do it. Now, the Green Party has in its platform a proposal to nationalize the Fed, set up a monetary authority in the Treasury, and print greenbacks. This is like a modern version of the old populist greenback demand, and spend it into the economy out of the Treasury Department. You can't do that now. It requires a radical change. The other option, pending that, is what they call green quantitative easing, except this time, instead of bailing out the banks, we're going to bail out the people in the planet. And as our friends in the modern monetary theory, the MMT people say, as long as the US dollar is the reserve currency, we can pretty much borrow all we need to. So money shouldn't be a problem. And the bottom line on it all is if we don't pay to do it now, it's going to cost us more not to do it, because it's going to destroy ecosystems and therefore agriculture and therefore the foundation of our civilization. So I said I'd go 10 minutes. I don't know where I am on time. But I'm looking at my boss, Andrea Maria. She says keep going. So let me talk about a few other policies that are just as important as this Green New Deal. We need peace policies. We have got out of the nuclear arms agreement. There's another one pending, the START Treaty, that Trump is like saying it isn't important. And now they're talking about a $1 trillion nuclear modernization program initiated by Obama, continued by Trump. And they're talking about tactical nukes and conventional theaters of war. And they say they're going to keep it tactical. I don't trust them to do that. That'll escalate into a nuclear annihilation of human civilization. We got to stop this madness. So we're going to make an issue of the goal of nuclear abolition. That was what the original Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was about. And every chance we get, we're going to make sure the Democrats and Republicans have to deal with that issue. And we're going to take it to the people. We're calling for a non-offensive defense posture. I'm a former Marine. I learned at Quantico, being trained to be an infantry leader, that it takes a lot less people and weapons to defend territory than to take territory. We have a military empire across the globe of over 800 military bases. That's not about our defense, that's about defending the interests of global corporations. We need a home-based, non-offensive defense. We're calling for cuts in military spending of 75%. We would still spend more than any other power in the world, but with that peace dividend, that's $750 billion, because we spend about $1 trillion when you look at the military spending in all departments, that should go toward a global Green New Deal. Let's help other countries pay for elementary education, clean water, preventive health care, and help them leap over the fossil fuel age as they develop into the solar age. That's how we make friends instead of enemies. Let's be the world's humanitarian superpower instead of a global military empire. Now, last weekend, we got good news out of the European Parliament elections. The Green vote surged. The far right underperformed. And the Greens ran on a Green New Deal. That is the positive program of hope around which we can rally. The far right has a negative program of fear based on racism, religious bigotry against Jews and Muslims, fact-free irrationalism, and authoritarianism. And I forgot xenophobia. And this positive program of hope around the Green New Deal is how we defeat our ultra-right in this country around Trumpism. And that's a central theme. And I've just got the signal. There's a whole lot of other things we can talk about, maybe in the question and answer, on economic and racial justice, why we need race-conscious programs to remedy race-conscious injuries, including reparations, why we need open borders like they have within the EU. Freedom of movement is a basic human right. We treat Mexico and Central America like South Africa used to treat its Bantustans. And there's the highest figure you get for unemployment in this country right now is 15.6 million. And we're talking about 23 million for the Green New Deal. And those immigrants, a lot of them want to do construction and manufacturing jobs. We're going to need those folks. Social justice and civil liberties. We want to end the war on drugs and mass incarceration. We want to legalize marijuana, decriminalize the other drugs so that people who are caught up with opioid addiction are not feeling like criminals and having to hide from treatment, but we provide treatment on demand. This is a health problem, not a criminal problem. We need federal action against white nationalist terrorism because it's getting people killed. And Trump shut down everything the FBI was doing to monitor these people. This is outrageous. We need freedom for the LGBTQIA+ community so there's non-discrimination across the board. And the federal law isn't up to that right now. We need to reduce the off-the-charts gun violence. We respect the right of people to own arms if they're law-abiding, pistols, rifles, and shotguns, but we need to do things like universal background checks, banning and then buying back military assault weapons. I know what I used in the Marine Corps should not be out there on the streets. That is for war, not for self-defense. And we got to defend our civil liberties. This Assange case is a frontal assault on the freedom of the press. The Espionage Act has always been used for repression, but under Obama, more people were indicted than under all previous presidents combined, and now Trump is using it. That's the latest Assange indictments. So there are a lot of issues, and we can talk about more. But let me close by just talking about how we're going to build the Green Party. I mentioned ballot lines. We're going to qualify for matching funds. So up to the first $250 you give to the campaign will be matched. And the Greens are going to use this. The major party candidates don't. They're so marinated in corporate money, they just bypass this system. So we can use it this year while it's still there. We are going to help Greens get better organized and support down-ticket candidates. If we can raise the money, we're going to hire organizers so that Greens are great activists. We show up, but we don't have the kind of skills that a union organizer or a trained community organizer has. And we need to do that because we want to build the base of the party beyond the usual suspects. You know, the well-educated activists. We got to reach the working class people, the youth. That's what gave the Greens in Europe a big vote. And people of color who undervote compared to more affluent groups. That is the future of the Green Party. Those are the people that are not voting. And that is how we're going to end up beating the Republicans and Democrats as we go forward. So I'm going to be a voice for this thing, but I'm part of a movement. And this will not work unless we get thousands and then tens of thousands of people involved as activists on the ground and as small donors. So please join us now. The climate, peace, and our living standards can't wait. Thank you.